Today's episode is brought to you by Checkfront, the booking platform trusted by over 5,000 tour and activity operators around the world. You can start your own free 21-day trial over at checkfront.com.
Welcome to the Tourpreneur podcast. Travel industry veteran Shane Whaley will take you on a journey with fellow tourpreneurs, sharing their tips, ideas, insights, and success stories to inspire you to make your tour business the best it can be. And now, please welcome your host, Shane.
And welcome to Tourpreneur at Arrival, presented by Checkfront. Today we are joined by Paul Melhus of Toursbylocals. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us today. So I see your company name. I see your social media out there quite a lot, but I'm not too aware of what you do. Could you share with our listeners what is it that Toursbylocals does?
Okay. Our mission is to create private tours everywhere people travel. So we have a network of just over 4,000 tour guides in 923 locations in 160 countries around the world.
Wow, 160.
Yes, that's what we're at. We feel like we're perhaps a third of the way there, that eventually when we're finished,
Right.
We'll end up with somewhere in the range of 3,500 locations. That seems to be the universe of where people want to have tours.
Yes. And how did this all get started?
The idea for the company began in 2006 with a trip that myself and Dave Vincent, the technical guru of Toursbylocals, we took a trip to Beijing. It was our last day, and we hadn't been to the Great Wall, which, of course, is a must-see there.
Yeah.
So rather than go to the close-in one, which is like the tour bus Disney version of the Great Wall, we hired a driver to take us out to Simitai, 2 hours north of Beijing. And while we were there, we passed a group of about 20 Chinese ladies, and two of them followed us and started giving us this impromptu tour, which was really good. But, there was always this undercurrent of why are they doing this? What's in it for them? And so after a couple of hours, when it was time for us to go to the airport, they brought out all of their tchotchkes and
Right.
books and cards and everything. And I guess we bought a few things, but on the plane, we talked about how this was not as satisfying an experience as it could have been, both for us and for them. So over the course of 2 years, we came up with the idea for Toursbylocals, and we launched in October of 2008, which, if you'll recall, was 1 month after Lehman Brothers crashed the world. So
Yeah, that must have been rough. You thought that, because you'd experienced this yourself, having a tour by a local, what made you then think, well, actually, there's a business here, that there would be a demand for this?
Well, the whole company basically revolves around my conceit that I have a certain way of traveling and that other people might share that. But of course, the basic problem of Toursbylocals is how do you get started? Because, there's no guides, so why would travelers come? There's no travelers. Why would guides bother signing up? I knew in my heart that there is a market for tour guides. I mean, people have been hiring them for the past 5, 6, 10,000 years, so it's not like a fad that's going to go away. And we wanted to try and professionalize the business and make it so that those two women in Beijing could, put themselves out to the world in a professional way, and then travelers like myself who wanted, that more authentic local experience would have a platform to discover them and book them and, get rid of all of the kind of friction points that make it hard to actually connect in a real way with a local person.
What can you do with your reservation software? Take online bookings and payment, manage your inventory, automate processes, and view reports and insights? Yeah, of course. But can you also send digital waivers, build a stunning website, and get help around the clock? What about optimize your booking channels, diversify your distribution, use your favorite tools, and choose your pricing model? With Checkfront, you can. One booking platform, limitless possibilities. Find out more at checkfront.com.
we have a lot of people listening to Tourpreneur who are what I call tourpreneurs in waiting. They either want to launch their own tour business or they want to become a tour guide. And what I hear from you is, let's say, for instance, I want to run a walking tour in the state of Maine. What would they need to do to be able to work with you?
Well, we have a team down in Buenos Aires that's tasked with recruiting, onboarding, and supporting all of our tour guides. Most of our new guides come through signing up on the website, referrals through, or hearing about us through social media, various ways that we're reaching out to guides. One of the principles, though, that we have with respect to tour guides is that we don't take on a new one unless we're sure that we can support them and give them a meaningful amount of business in the course of a year. So we've got a lot of guides, say, for example, in Rome or Paris, who are, I'm sure, great guides and perfectly fine in that regard. But if we don't think that we're going to, be able to deliver them a sufficient number of tours per year, then we'll put them awaiting opening, we call it. And then as our business grows, because we are growing quite quickly, and people retire or they change professions, or sometimes they're not giving the great experience to the customers, and we'll decide to part ways. So there are always openings in pretty well all areas. But, you mentioned Maine. Actually, that would be an area where we would like to be. And I think we have somebody in Bangor, but that's a place that... Yeah,
I just picked Maine randomly because I imagine in New York and San Francisco you get quite a lot of demand
for sure. Well, actually, Maine is popular in the fall when they the cruise ships go from Montreal down to New York, and they have a couple of stops along the way in Maine. So,
and how do you go about quality testing guides that sign up with you?
Yeah, that's a big part of the value that we give to customers, because we want Tours by Locals to be a source for vetted, people that are going to do what they say and deliver that awesome experience that everybody wants. So, firstly, we ask them to provide us with 2 references. We run them every guide through a database called World Check. So it screens them against, all kinds of Interpol and OFAC sanctions. Make sure that they're quality people from that point of view. And then we phone the 2 references. We do an interview process. We have a kind of cultural fit test that we ask them to do and explain, what our principles are, and, get their agreement to do that. We're checking their licenses now if that's required. And it is in many places in Europe. And then we have a whole process of onboarding and supporting and making them comfortable with the product.
So how do you then, I'm pleased to hear that you're very thorough with your quality assurance there and your quality testing. My next question is, you're up against some pretty big beasts when it comes to the big OTAs who are spending a lot of money on AdWords for their tours. How do you promote Tours by Locals?
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, we're not really for those kind of tour operators. We're for the individual entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's just, I'll just clarify. So if I'm looking for that tour in Maine, and I go to Google, and how do I find your company?
Well,
as opposed to TripAdvisor or Get Your Guide.
Yeah, we do spend a lot of money on AdWords as well. But yeah, definitely customer acquisition is the biggest challenge that we face. So we work with the guide to help them craft their profile so that it will come up in organic search results. Some of the keywords like Maine private guide, those kind of keywords are not as competitive as Rome tour, for example. So yeah, that would be a really hard one to compete against. But for the term Rome private tour, or any name of place private tour, we are already serving up 95% of the available impressions on Google. So my Amex bill, which we charge our Google AdWords on, is pretty hefty.
I can imagine.
Every month.
I can imagine. And then online bookings, are you working with a booking platform provider, a software company? How does that look?
No, we've developed our own.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we have our own system that serves our needs. So.
Was that because you felt that the software that was out there wasn't going to be covering everything that you needed, or do you just feel like you wanted to run that in-house?
Well, we are pretty much control freaks in that
Okay.
regard. But in 2008, there really wasn't, when
Yeah.
we started in 2006 and, we were developing the product through 2006, 2007, there wasn't a lot of people out there that were offering this kind of
Very true.
tours and activities booking product. So kind of had to develop our own, and we've just maintained it ever since.
Sure. And my final question for today, because I'd love to invite you back on. I got a million questions in my head that I'd love to ask you. What's the best piece of advice anyone has ever given you when it comes to business?
Trust your gut.
Yeah, I like that one. Thank you very much for coming on the show. And your website is?
Toursbylocals.com.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Shane.
Thanks for listening to the Tourpreneur podcast. Be sure to visit tourpreneur.com to join the conversation and access the show notes, including links to the resources mentioned on today's episode. This is Tourpreneur.